My wife got all dressed up at 11 p.m. I asked, "Where are you going this late?" She snapped, "Now you want to talk? I don't owe you explanations." Then she doubled down. "Maybe today I'll find two young guys half your age to make me a woman." I said calmly, "Pull up your dress now, or I—" She challenged, "Or what?" Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I didn't answer. That's the thing about Zoe. She expected fire, volume, theatrics. She wanted me to grab her arm, to shout, to give her ammunition for whatever narrative she was building. I gave her silence instead, and silence made her nervous. It always had, even back when things were good between us. She stood there in the doorway, hips cocked, one hand on the frame, waiting for me to play my part in whatever drama she'd scripted. Her dress was new, something I hadn't seen before. Dark red, expensive looking, cut low enough to make a statement. She'd spent time on her makeup too, more than she ever did for our date nights, back when we still had those. But I just looked at her, architect's eyes measuring the angles of her face, calculating the stress points. I'd spent 20 years reading buildings, understanding where they'd fail, where the cracks would form. People weren't so different. You just had to know what to look for. "That's what I thought," she said finally, grabbing her purse from the hook by the door. The Prada one I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary, back when I still believed in grand gestures. You never have anything to say when it matters. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood there in the kitchen, counting the seconds, listening to her heels click down the hallway outside our condo. 16 steps to the elevator. I'd counted them 1,000 times. The elevator chimed, the doors closed, then silence. I walked to the counter where her phone had been sitting all evening, face down. She'd taken it with her, of course. But the notification was still glowing on my tablet, the one we shared for grocery lists and calendars and meal planning, the domestic details of a life we'd built together, a photo, Tyler Brooks, fitness trainer, age 29 according to his very public Instagram profile. His arm around someone in a dark dress, her dress, the one she was wearing right now. The metadata said the photo was taken 4 hours ago, around 7 p.m., when she'd told me she was working late on a personnel review. I zoomed in on the background. I recognized the bar, a trendy place downtown called Elevation. I'd been there once for a client meeting. In the photo, Tyler was grinning at the camera, all white teeth and confidence. Zoe's face was turned slightly away, but I could see her smile, the way her hand rested on his chest. I knew exactly where she'd pretend she wasn't. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. My hands were steady. That surprised me a little. I'd imagined this moment before, during those long nights when she came home late smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. I'd thought I'd feel rage, or grief, or something hot and desperate. Instead, I felt cold, analytical, like I was reviewing a building plan and finding all the code violations. I pulled up our shared bank account first, then the credit card statements, then the ride-share history that we'd linked for tax purposes back when we were still pretending to be a team. I started taking notes, architect's precision, documenting everything. The next morning, Zoe came home at 6:15. I was already up, coffee made, sitting at the dining table with my laptop open and a stack of printed bank statements beside me. I'd highlighted the relevant charges in yellow. The Lux Hotel, downtown. 3 separate charges over the past month, always on nights she said she was working late or meeting her friend Claire. She walked past without looking at me, heading straight for the bedroom. Her dress was wrinkled. Her hair, which had been perfect last night, was tangled. She'd clearly tried to fix her makeup in a car mirror and hadn't quite succeeded. "Coffee's fresh," I said, not looking up from the screen. She stopped mid-step, turned. Her eyes were red, though whether from crying or lack of sleep I couldn't tell. "I don't want your coffee, Alex." Suit yourself. I went back to highlighting another line on the top statement. American Express, ending in 4829. The Lux Hotel charged $647 on October 3rd. I remembered that night. She'd called at 8:30, said the personnel review was running late, that she'd probably crash at Claire's to avoid the drive home tired. I'd said okay, told her to be safe, gone to bed alone. Zoe stood there for another moment, her hand gripping the doorframe like she needed the support. I could see her trying to figure out what I knew, what I was doing, whether she should attack or defend. "What are you doing?" she asked finally. I looked up, made eye contact, let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Reviewing our finances. We should probably separate accounts." Her face went pale, then red. The transformation took maybe 3 seconds. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe." I closed the laptop carefully, making sure the gesture was deliberate, measured. Or maybe I'm just paying attention for the first time in months. "Alex, if this is about last night..." "This isn't about last night. This is about the pattern. The late meetings that don't show up on your work calendar, the rides that terminate at the same gym 3 times a week, the hotel charges on nights when you said you were too tired to drive home." She opened her mouth, closed it. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the HR director trying to spin the narrative. "I need to shower," she said finally. "We can talk about this later." "Sure. Take your time." She disappeared into the bedroom. The lock clicked. The shower started running. I kept working. This was what I did for a living after all. I looked at spaces, systems, load paths. I figured out where the weight was, where the cracks would form, how to redirect force before the whole structure came down. A marriage wasn't so different from a building. You just had to understand the architecture. By the time she emerged, dressed for work in a navy suit that made her look professional and untouchable, I'd moved on to the rideshare receipts. She had her own account, but we'd always shared access for tax purposes. Funny how many rides terminated at Tyler's gym. Funny how many originated from there late at night. Funny how the pattern had started 4 months ago, right around the time she'd announced she wanted to get serious about fitness. "What are you doing?" she asked again, her voice sharper now. I looked up slowly. "I already told you. Reviewing our finances. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to understand what I'm paying for. There's a difference." Her jaw tightened. She grabbed her briefcase from the counter, checked her phone, wouldn't meet my eyes. "I have a meeting at 8. We'll talk tonight." "Sure. If you're home." She left without responding, the door closing with a careful, controlled click instead of a slam. Like she was trying to prove she was still in control, still the reasonable one. I pulled out my phone and called Mason Riley, my only real friend. We'd known each other since college, back when I still thought I wanted to be a musician instead of an architect. Mason had been my roommate for 3 years. Now he ran a bar downtown, the kind of place where regulars knew your name and the drinks were strong enough to be honest. "Little early for a social call," Mason said when he answered, his voice gravelly with sleep. "I need a favor," I told him. "What kind?" "The kind where you don't ask questions yet." Mason was quiet for a moment. Then I heard him moving, probably sitting up in bed. "When do you need me?" "Tonight. Bring a lock for your garage, a good one." He laughed, dry and short. "This about Zoe?" "Yeah." "About damn time. I'll be free after 6. I spent the rest of the day at work, supposedly designing an adaptive reuse project for an old factory space downtown. The client wanted to convert it into mixed-use residential, keeping the industrial character while making it livable. My boss, Jennifer, kept praising my attention to circulation patterns, to sight lines, to the way people naturally moved through a room. "This is excellent work, Alex," she said, leaning over my desk to study the renderings. "The way you've maintained the visual connection between floors while creating private spaces, it's inspired." If only she knew I was thinking about my own home the whole time. About circulation patterns and sight lines, and the way Zoe moved through our space like she owned every inch of it, about how to reclaim territory without making it obvious. That evening, while Zoe was still at her HR job, I moved our wedding photos into storage boxes. Not throwing them away, not destroying them, just removing them from display, from the narrative of our daily life. Then, the expensive kitchen appliances I'd bought with my bonus last year, the espresso machine, the stand mixer, the knife set. Then, the vintage record player my father had given me before he passed away, the one thing I owned that could never be replaced. I took them to Mason's place in 3 careful trips, photographing each item before I loaded it, keeping the receipts organized in a folder. Documentation. Evidence. The kind of paper trail that would hold up if things got legal. "You planning to tell me what this is about?" Mason asked, helping me carry the last box into his garage. He'd brought a heavy-duty padlock like I'd asked, commercial grade. "Zoe's been visiting Tyler Brooks 3 times a week for the past 2 months. Mason set down the box carefully, like it might break. "The trainer? The guy who posts those shirtless selfies with the motivational quotes?" "That's him." "You sure?" I showed him the printed receipts, the ride patterns, the timestamps that overlapped with her claimed work events. I'd organized everything in a 3-ring binder, chronological order, highlighted and annotated. Mason studied them with the same focus he used when reviewing his bar's liquor inventory, checking each line item. "Jesus, Alex, this is thorough. I'm an architect. Thorough is what I do." He looked at me, really looked, probably searching for signs of breakdown or rage or grief, but I kept my face neutral. I'd had practice at that over the past few months. "What are you gonna do?" he asked. "Tomorrow, he skips leg day." Mason almost smiled. "You want backup?" "No, but I want you to know where I'll be. 6 a.m., Elevation Fitness on Market Street." "That's his gym?" "That's his gym." Tyler's gym was one of those boutique places with exposed brick walls and motivational quotes painted in white letters. "Pain is weakness leaving the body. Stronger than yesterday." The kind of place where people paid premium rates to take mirror selfies between sets. I walked in at 6 a.m., wearing workout clothes I'd bought the day before. Nothing fancy. The membership fee was $240 a month, but I wasn't planning to use it long. Tyler was easy to spot. 6'2", muscled in that very deliberate way, wearing a tank top that showed off his arms. He was correcting a client's form on the squat rack, his hand on her lower back. I waited until his session ended. Then I approached. "Tyler Brooks?" He turned, sizing me up. Older guy, not as built, probably some corporate type. "That's me. You looking for training?" "Looking for a conversation." His smile didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "About what?" "Zoe Lamb." Now the smile dropped. He glanced around, checking if anyone was listening. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Sure you do. You've been spending a lot of time with my wife." Tyler's jaw tightened. Then he laughed, meant to establish dominance. "Your wife makes her own choices, man. If she's not happy at home, that's on you." I'd spent 20 years learning how to read spaces, how to understand leverage, balance, points of failure. Tyler was standing with his back to the mirror wall, weight on his heels, arms loose. Confident. Too confident. "You're right," I said calmly. "She does make choices. Bad ones, usually." He stepped forward, closing the distance to about 3 feet. "You need to leave. In a minute. I just want you to understand something. Zoe thinks you're an upgrade. She told me last night she could find 2 guys half my age to replace me." Tyler's grin returned, cocky and sharp. "Maybe she can. Maybe. But here's the thing about guys like you, Tyler. You're used to being the strongest person in the room. You think that matters." He moved fast. His hand came up to shove my shoulder to establish physical dominance. But I'd been watching his weight distribution, his angle. When his hand came forward, I stepped inside his reach, dropped my center of gravity, and used the bench beside us as a pivot point. My shoulder hit his sternum hard, not hard enough to really hurt him, but hard enough to break his balance. His heel caught the base of the bench. He went down sideways, his elbow slamming into the rubber mat with a sound that echoed through the gym. 2 other trainers looked over. The woman on the elliptical pulled out an earbud. One of the powerlifters stopped mid-rep. Tyler scrambled up, face red, breathing hard. "You crazy? I'll call the cops." "For what? You put your hands on me first. Ask them." I nodded to the trainers. One of them, a guy with a shaved head and sleeve tattoos, had definitely seen Tyler shove first. Tyler's mouth opened, closed. He looked at his colleagues, then back at me. The alpha energy was gone, replaced by something smaller. "Stay away from Zoe," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "That's her choice to make," I said, echoing his earlier words. "But you should know something. She signed a personal financing agreement 6 months ago for a luxury resort weekend. The paperwork required employment verification and character references. You provided one of those references, Tyler. You told the resort coordinator she was single, that you'd known her for years in a professional capacity, that she was financially stable." His face went white. "That's not... I didn't... You did. I have the document. Your signature, your phone number, your email address. The problem is, she wasn't single. And if her employer finds out she lied on a document that reflects on their company's reputation, especially given her position as HR director..." I shrugged. "Well, Zoe knows what happens to people who compromise the company image." Tyler stared at me, mouth working, but no sound coming out. Around us, the gym had gone quiet. "You wanted to know if I'm crazy," I said. "I'm not. I'm just done being careful." I walked out. Behind me, I could hear Tyler trying to explain something to the trainers, his voice pitched high with panic. The morning air was cold and clean. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, waiting for the adrenaline to fade. My shoulder ached where I'd hit Tyler, but underneath the physical sensations, I felt something else. Satisfaction. Control. I pulled out my phone and texted Mason. "It's done." His response came immediately. "How'd it go?" He went down easy. "Good. Next phase?" "Next phase." I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Zoe's office. I ordered a dark roast and sent 2 text messages. The first was to Patricia, Zoe's mother. "Patricia, I need to speak with you. It's important. Can you meet me for coffee this afternoon?" The second was to Claire, Zoe's best friend. "Claire, I know we're not close, but I need to show you something. Can you meet me at Harvest at 3? Patricia responded first. "Is everything all right?" "No, but it will be." 3 o'clock works. Claire took longer. "Is this about Zoe?" "Yes." "Okay, I'll come." That afternoon, I arrived at Harvest early and claimed a corner table. At 2:55, Patricia walked in. She was a sharp woman in her late 60s, a retired school principal who'd spent 40 years dealing with teenagers and their excuses. "Alex," she said, sitting down, "what's this about?" "Let's wait for Claire." Claire arrived 3 minutes later, looking nervous. She and Zoe had been friends since college, had been each other's maids of honor. "Okay," Patricia said once we were all seated. "What's going on?" I pulled out the folder. I'd removed anything that felt like speculation or emotion. What remained was just facts, dates, times, receipts, photos. "I need to show you something," I said, "and I need you to know that I'm not doing this to hurt Zoe. I'm doing this because she's going to call you. She's going to tell you I'm paranoid, controlling, possibly dangerous. And I need you to know the truth before she spins it." I laid out the receipts first. The Lux Hotel. 3 separate charges. Patricia's face tightened as she read the dates. "She told me she was working late on personnel reviews," Patricia said quietly. "She called me one of these nights. I was in Pittsburgh that week, site review for a hospital project." Next came the ride-share patterns. Claire leaned forward, studying the addresses. That's Tyler's gym, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She told me she was taking a yoga class there. Tyler doesn't teach yoga. He's a personal trainer, and these rides, they're all late at night, some past midnight. I showed them the social media photos. Tyler's arm around Zoe at a restaurant. The two of them at elevation, timestamps that corresponded with nights she'd told her mother she was working late. She told me that weekend in October was a work retreat, Patricia said, her voice hard now. Team building. It was the Lux Resort, same place she's been meeting Tyler. We sat in silence. Claire was crying quietly. Patricia just stared at the papers, her expression carved from stone. Who is he? Patricia asked finally. Tyler Brooks, 29 years old, fitness trainer. Claire's head snapped up. Oh my God, I introduced them. I thought she just wanted to work out. You didn't know, but she used your introduction to justify the contact. Patricia picked up the last document, the financing letter. She read it slowly. What is this? 6 months ago, Zoe signed a personal financing agreement for a luxury weekend. The paperwork required character references. Tyler provided one. He stated he'd known Zoe for 5 years in a professional capacity, that she was unmarried, that she was financially stable. Patricia looked up at me. But you were married 6 years ago. Yes. So he lied. Yes. And Zoe knew because she provided his contact information. Claire wiped her eyes. Alex, why are you showing us this? Because Zoe's going to try to control the narrative. She's an HR director. She knows how to frame situations. And I need you to know the truth before she starts spinning. Patricia folded the papers carefully and slid them back. Her hands were shaking slightly. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm separating our finances, moving my personal property to secure storage, filing for divorce, and making sure everyone who matters knows why. Everyone who matters? Her family, her close friends, the people whose opinions she actually cares about? I'm not putting this on social media. I'm not trying to destroy her publicly. But I'm also not going to let her make me the villain. Patricia looked at me with something I hadn't seen before. Respect, maybe. She won't call me, Patricia said finally. I'm canceling our brunch on Sunday. I need time to think. Claire nodded slowly. I can't keep covering for her, Alex. I'm so sorry I introduced them. You didn't know what would happen, but now you do. I left them sitting at the table, the folder between them like evidence at a trial. Zoe came home that night and headed straight to the shelf where my grandmother's jade sculpture used to sit, the one my father passed on to me after she was gone. The spot was empty now, just a clean rectangle on a dusty shelf. Where is it? She demanded. Somewhere safe. That's mine. Your grandmother gave it to me. My grandmother gave it to me, and I have it appraised and insured under my name. Would you like to see the documentation? Her face went through several expressions in quick succession. Shock first, then anger, then something that might have been fear. You can't just take things, she said. I can take things I own. I've been very careful about that. Everything I removed was purchased with my individual accounts or gifted to me specifically. I have receipts for all of it. She grabbed her phone, started texting furiously, probably to Claire, probably to her mother. She'd find out soon enough that they weren't answering the way she expected. You planned this, she said, her fingers racing across the screen. Planning what? Protecting my property during a separation? That's just common sense, Zoe. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and I watched her face change. The text from Patricia, probably, or Claire. The realization that I'd gotten to them first. She threw her phone at me, not at my feet, not at the wall beside me, directly at my head, with enough force behind it that it could have done real damage if it connected. I stepped aside, and it hit the wall behind me, the screen shattering with a sharp crack. She stared at it for a moment, then at me. Her chest was heaving. I hate you, she whispered. I know. But you didn't always. That's the sad part. She grabbed her purse and walked out. I heard her car start in the parking garage below, the engine roaring as she peeled out. I picked up her broken phone from where it had fallen, careful not to cut myself on the shattered glass. Then I texted Mason. "She's probably heading to Tyler's. Keep an eye out." His response was immediate. "On it." I spent the next hour documenting the damage to the wall where her phone had hit. Photos from multiple angles, measurements of the dent in the drywall, a clear timestamp. Then I filed a police report online, non-emergency, just noting the incident. Not pressing charges, just creating a paper trail. The next morning, just like I'd predicted, Zoe showed up at Mason's place. He called me as soon as she arrived. It was 8 a.m. Zoe in full professional armor, designer suit, hair perfect, makeup flawless. "Mason," she said, her voice bright and friendly. "I need to get some of Alex's things. There are items in there that belong to me." "No," Mason said, his voice flat. "Excuse me?" I said no. "Alex stored his property here. He has receipts. Unless you can produce a receipt showing you bought something in that garage, you're not getting in. I'm his wife. Separated wife. And unless you have a court order, this conversation is over." I heard Zoe's voice change, losing the professional friendliness. "Mason, don't be ridiculous." "No. There's a mixer in there that I bought with my own money. Show me the receipt." Silence. Then the sound of Zoe trying to push past him. "Don't," Mason said. "Get out of my way." "No. You touch me again, and I'm calling the police." More silence. Then Zoe's voice, shrill now. "I'll tell them you're holding my property hostage. Do it. I'll show them Alex's documentation. Every item in this garage has a receipt. You want to explain to cops why you're trying to access someone else's secured property?" I heard footsteps, then a car door slamming. Mason came back on the line. "She left," he said. "Thanks for that." "She looked scared, Alex. Like, actually scared." "Good." That afternoon, one of Zoe's co-workers called me. Her name was Nina, and we'd met at a few company events. She'd always been polite, but distant. "Alex, can we meet?" she asked. "Why?" "Because I have something you need to see." We met at a park bench near her apartment. She handed me a manila envelope without preamble. "What is this?" 6 months ago, Zoe asked me to help her set up a luxury weekend getaway. She said it was a surprise for your anniversary. She needed a personal financing letter because the resort required it for their platinum package. I opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of the letter, Zoe's signature, and below it, a reference signature from Tyler Brooks. I read the paragraph where Tyler confirmed he'd known Zoe Lamb for 5 years, that she was unmarried, that she was financially reliable. "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. Nina looked out at the park. "Because she's throwing you under the bus at work. She's telling people you're abusive, controlling, that she's afraid of you. And I know that's not true. I've seen you two together. You were always the one trying to make peace. This letter, Tyler lied on it." "Yeah, and if Zoe's employer finds out she falsified a personal document that references her position as HR director, that reflects on the company's ethics." Nina shrugged. "It's a violation of the morals clause in her contract. She'd be terminated immediately." "Thank you," I said. Nina stood up. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm tired of watching her ruin people and walk away clean." I added the letter to my folder. That evening, Tyler showed up at the condo building. Mason was with me. We were carrying the last box of my tools when Tyler came around the corner. He had his hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. "Alex," he said, "we need to talk." "No, we don't." "Man, this is getting out of hand. Zoe's losing her mind. She's been calling me 20 times a day. That's between you and her." Tyler moved closer. "You're ruining her life." Mason stepped between us. "Walk away, kid." "This isn't your business," Tyler said. "He made it my business when he asked for my help. Now back up before I make you back up." Tyler looked at Mason, then at me. She's not worth this. You know that, right? She's just using both of us. Then why are you here? He didn't have an answer. He walked away, shoulders hunched, looking smaller with every step. Kid's scared, Mason said. He should be. The next evening, I invited a small group to Mason's bar after hours. Patricia, Claire, Nina, 2 of Zoe's cousins, who'd always been kind to me. Mason himself, 7 people total. The only people whose opinions Zoe actually cared about. I didn't make a speech. I just laid everything on the table. The receipts, the ride patterns, the social media photos, the financing letter with Tyler's lie, the timeline that showed the affair had been going on for at least 6 months. Alex, I don't understand why you're showing us this, one of the cousins said. Her name was Rebecca. Because Zoe's going to tell you I'm paranoid, that I'm controlling, that I'm dangerous. She's already started at her work, and I need you to know the truth before she spins it. Patricia picked up the financing letter. She told me that weekend was a work retreat. It was the Lux Resort, same place she's been meeting Tyler. Here's the American Express statement showing her personal card was charged, not her corporate card. Claire was crying again. I introduced them. Oh God, I introduced them. Nina shook her head. She's been filing HR complaints about other people for less than this. She fired a woman last year for having an affair with a vendor. Said it compromised ethical standards. And she's doing exactly the same thing. We sat in silence. Patricia was still holding the financing letter, her hands trembling. What are you going to do, Alex? Patricia asked finally. I'm going to finish this, but I needed you to know the truth first. Finish it how? You'll see. Rebecca leaned forward. Alex, are you going to hurt her? No, I'm going to let her hurt herself. I'm just going to make sure everyone sees it happen. 3 days later, Zoe called me. Her voice was shaking with rage, with something that might have been desperation. What did you do? My mother won't talk to me. Claire blocked my number. Nina won't return my emails. Tyler's gym is canceling his contract, and he's losing clients. What the hell did you do? I told the truth, I said calmly. That's all. I showed people the facts and let them draw their own conclusions. You're destroying my life. No, Zoe. You destroyed your life when you decided to have an affair and lie about it for 6 months. I'm just making sure you don't destroy mine in the process. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You and Tyler both lied on a financing document. You both lied to your mother, to Claire, to everyone. You threw your phone at my head hard enough to crack the drywall, and now you're telling your coworkers I'm abusive. So no, I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. She was crying now, harsh sobs that sounded more like rage than grief. I want my things, the jade sculpture, the kitchen appliances, all of it. Show me receipts proving you bought them. They're marital property. No, they're documented personal property purchased with my individual accounts before we were married or gifted to me specifically. I have the credit card statements, the gift receipts, everything organized by date. Unless you want to go to court and explain to a judge why you're trying to claim things you didn't pay for while also claiming I'm abusive, I'd suggest you move on. Silence. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, I hate you. I know. But you didn't always. And that's what makes this sad, Zoe. You didn't hate me when I was useful. You didn't hate me when I was paying half the bills and keeping my mouth shut. You only started hating me when I stopped accepting it. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Tyler this time. She's coming to my place, he said, his voice tight. She's hysterical. What did you say to her? The truth. You should try it sometime. Man, just leave us alone. You won. You broke us up. Just let us go. I'm not keeping you. I'm not stopping you from being together. But I'm also not protecting you from the consequences of your choices anymore. What consequences? I didn't do anything wrong. You lied on a financing document. You helped Zoe deceive her family and friends. You put your hands on me in your gym. And now your reputation is catching up with your actions. That's not my fault, Tyler. That's yours. Tyler made a sound like he wanted to argue, then hung up. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Just an address, no explanation. But I recognized the numbers immediately. 847 Riverside Industrial, the old factory building where my firm had done site surveys last year for a potential adaptive reuse project. The deal had fallen through, and the building sat empty now. I knew it was Tyler. I also knew it was stupid to go alone. But I also knew that building inside and out. Every entrance, every exit, every sight line, every structural element. I called Mason. He wants to meet at the old Riverside Industrial building. That's a terrible idea, Alex. Probably. You want me there? No. But I want you to know where I am. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, call the police. Don't be an idiot. I'm an architect. I know that building inside and out. If he wants to confront me, he's going to do it on my terms. I drove to the building at 9 p.m. The parking lot was empty except for Tyler's Jeep, parked near the main entrance. The building loomed against the dark sky, 5 stories of brick and steel and broken windows. The main entrance was chained shut, but I knew the side door on the north wall still had a broken lock. I didn't go in through the obvious entrance. Instead, I circled around to the north side, where an old loading dock provided access through a rolling door that didn't quite close. I slipped inside, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. The interior was exactly as I remembered. High ceilings supported by A-frame trusses, raw concrete floors scattered with debris, the smell of old metal and dust. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, creating pools of pale light. I heard footsteps echoing through the main space. Tyler, walking slowly, probably trying to look confident while his heart raced. I stayed quiet, moving along the wall using the support columns for cover. This was what I did. I understood spaces, how people moved through them, where they looked, where they didn't. Alex, you here? Tyler's voice echoed off the concrete. I stayed silent, watching him from the shadows. He was alone. He was nervous. He kept his phone out, using it as a flashlight. Come on, man. Let's just talk this out like adults. I stepped out into one of the moonlit pools 30 feet away. Tyler spun toward me. There you are. Jesus, you're creepy. You texted me an abandoned building at night. I think that's textbook creepy. Tyler moved closer, his swagger returning now that he had visual confirmation I was alone. Look, we need to figure this out. Zoe's falling apart. You got what you wanted. Everyone knows. Her family hates her. She's probably going to lose her job. Can't you just back off? Back off from what? I'm not doing anything to her. I'm just not protecting her anymore. You know what I mean. All that stuff you told her mom, her friends. You're making her look like some kind of monster. I showed them facts, receipts, timestamps, photos. If that makes her look like a monster, maybe she is one. Tyler's jaw clenched. She made mistakes, okay? We both did. But that doesn't mean you get to destroy our lives. Your lives were already destroyed, Tyler. You just didn't know it yet. You thought you could have an affair without consequences. You thought lying on a financial document wouldn't matter. You thought you could push me around in your gym and I'd just take it. But here's the thing about assumptions. They only work until someone calls you on them. I'm trying to be reasonable here. No, you're trying to make this my fault. You're trying to convince yourself that I'm the bad guy because that's easier than accepting responsibility. Tyler moved closer, and I could see the exact moment he decided words weren't working. His shoulders tensed. His weight shifted forward. He charged. No technique, no strategy, just a straight bull rush meant to overwhelm me with size and speed. I'd fought him before. I knew his moves. When he came in, I didn't retreat. I stepped sideways and slightly forward, using his momentum to pull him off balance. My hand caught his wrist, redirecting his swing toward a support column. His fist hit concrete instead of my face, and I heard him gasp in pain. Before he could recover, I pivoted, using my hip as a fulcrum, and threw his weight toward a pile of collapsed foam insulation sheets stacked against the wall. He hit them hard, his body making a muffled sound as he collapsed into the padding. He tried to get up, but I was already moving. One hand on his shoulder, pressing down, the other pulling his arm back just far enough to make the threat clear. "Are we done?" I asked. Tyler was breathing hard, face pressed into the foam. "Please, please, man, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For all of it. For Zoe, for the gym, for the letter, all of it. Just let me go." I held him there for another moment, feeling the tension in his muscles, the fear making him shake. Then I released him and stepped back. Tyler scrambled up, holding his shoulder, breathing like he'd run a marathon. He looked at me with something between fear and disbelief. "You're insane," he said. "No, I'm just done being the nice guy who takes whatever you and Zoe dish out. Now get out of here before I change my mind." He ran. Actually ran, his footsteps echoing until I heard the distant sound of the side door slamming shut, then his Jeep starting up and tearing out of the parking lot. I stood there in the darkness, breathing slowly, letting the adrenaline fade. My hands were steady. I'd just beaten a man 10 years younger and significantly stronger, and I'd done it using nothing but leverage, timing, and knowledge of terrain. I pulled out my phone and texted Mason. "It's done." His reply was instant. "You good?" "Yeah. Heading home." "The new place?" "The new place." I drove to the apartment I'd rented 2 weeks ago, the small one-bedroom place Zoe didn't know about. It was nothing fancy. Basic kitchen, decent bathroom, a view of a parking lot, but it was mine, clean, quiet, safe. I made coffee and sat at the window, watching the city lights pulse in the distance. My phone buzzed. Patricia. Claire called me. She said Tyler's posting on social media that you assaulted him. Is that true? He texted me to meet him at an abandoned building at night. When I got there, he attacked me. I defended myself using reasonable force, and then I left. If he wants to file charges, I have the text showing he initiated contact, and I'm happy to show the police the security footage from the building. There was a long pause. There's security footage? The building's under consideration for purchase. The owner installed cameras 6 months ago. I checked before I went. Another pause. You really did think of everything. I'm an architect. Planning is what I do. Zoe called me tonight. She's not doing well, Alex. I know. Did you have to go this far? I thought about the question, about the months of lies, the contempt in her voice when she'd told me she could find someone better, the way she'd looked at me like I was invisible, the way she'd thrown her phone at my head and then tried to claim I was the abusive one. Yeah, I said. I did. Patricia was quiet for a moment longer. Okay. If you need anything, you know how to reach me. Thank you. I hung up and set the phone down. 2 days later, I got another text from an unknown number. This time it was just 2 words. Industrial loft. I knew immediately it was Zoe. She'd probably gotten the address from Tyler. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the whole thing fade away. But another part, the part that had been planning and documenting and moving pieces into place for months, knew this needed a final moment. A closing. I called Mason. She wants to meet at the Riverside building. Both of them? Probably. You want me there? Stay close, but not inside. Alex, I need to finish this alone, but I need to know you're nearby. Mason sighed. I'll be in the parking lot. You've got 30 minutes, then I'm coming in. I arrived at 9:30. Both vehicles were there, Tyler's Jeep and Zoe's Audi. I went in through the north loading dock again, moving quietly through the darkness. They were in the main space, standing under one of the broken skylights where moonlight spilled down. Zoe was dressed like she was going to a business meeting, her armor on. Tyler was wearing gym clothes, holding his shoulder where I'd twisted it. "There he is," Tyler said when he saw me. "Your monster husband." I walked forward until I was about 20 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to react if things went wrong. "You wanted to talk," I said. "Talk." Zoe stepped forward. "I want this to stop. All of it. The evidence you showed my mother, my friends, Nina. I want you to tell them you were wrong." "I wasn't wrong. Everything I showed them was true." "You're destroying my reputation, my career, my relationships." "No, Zoe. You did that. I just documented it." "You planned this from the very beginning," she snapped. "You let me leave that first night, and you mapped out every step after that. I didn't plan for you to have an affair. I didn't plan for you to lie to everyone who cared about you. I didn't plan for Tyler to lie on a legal document. You did all of that yourselves. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening." Tyler moved closer to her, protective. "She made a mistake. People make mistakes." "No, Tyler. Mistakes are accidents. What you two did was a choice. Multiple choices over and over for 6 months." Zoe's face twisted. "What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cheated. I'm sorry I lied. Is that what you need to hear?" "No," I said quietly. "Because you're not actually sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry people know the truth. But you're not sorry for what you did." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because she knew I was right. "Here's what happens now," I said. "You're going to sign the divorce papers my lawyer sends you. You're going to stop telling people I'm abusive. You're going to accept that the people who matter most to you now know who you really are. And you're going to live with that." "And if I don't?" Zoe challenged. "Then I send the financing letter to your employer. I send all the documentation to their ethics board. And you lose everything." Her face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me." Tyler stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You think you're so smart. You think you've won." "I don't think anything, Tyler. I know. I know that your gym dropped you. I know that 3 of your clients left. I know that you're 1 month behind on rent. I know all of it because I've been paying attention while you two were busy playing house. You son of a—" Tyler lunged, but this time I was ready. When he came forward, I didn't use leverage or technique. I just stepped in and drove my fist straight into his jaw. A short, clean punch with my full body weight behind it. Not a haymaker, not a wild swing, just basic physics. Force, angle, follow-through. Tyler's head snapped back. His knees buckled. He dropped like someone had cut his strings, collapsing into the same pile of foam sheets as before, but this time he didn't get up. His eyes fluttered, consciousness guttering like a candle in the wind. Zoe screamed and ran to him, dropping to her knees beside his body. "Tyler! Tyler, wake up!" I stood there, my knuckles throbbing, watching her cradle his head. This woman I'd married, this person I'd tried to build a life with. She looked smaller now, her armor cracked, her control shattered. "You're a monster," she whispered, looking up at me with tears streaming down her face. "No, Zoe. I'm just someone who stopped letting you treat me like I didn't matter." I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Tyler groan, starting to come around. I heard Zoe helping him sit up, heard their voices start to rise in anger at each other, not at me. The blame game beginning. I didn't look back. Outside, Mason was leaning against his truck, arms folded. He straightened when he saw me. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm good." "It's really done?" "It's really done." We stood there for a moment in the cold night air. Then Mason clapped me on the shoulder. "Let's get you home." "Yeah, home." I drove back to my apartment, Mason following in his truck to make sure I got there okay. When I pulled into the parking lot, he flashed his lights once and drove away. I went inside, made coffee, and sat at the window. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Zoe, No texts from Tyler. Just silence. In the morning, my lawyer called. She signed the papers. No contest. She's accepting the terms. That was fast. Her lawyer said she just wants it over with. Good. 3 weeks later, Patricia called me. I wanted you to know. Zoe resigned from her job. She's moving to another city, starting over. How is she? Broken. But maybe that's what she needed. And Tyler? Gone. They broke up the night you met them at that building. She told Claire he blamed her for everything. Of course he did. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Alex, I want to apologize. For not seeing it sooner. For not being there for you. You didn't know. She's good at hiding things. Still, if you need anything, you let me know. I will. Thank you, Patricia. I hung up and looked around my apartment. Small, clean, mine. I'd hung a few pictures on the walls. My father's record player sat on a shelf, the jade sculpture beside it. The kitchen appliances I'd salvaged were organized in the cabinets, everything in its place. My phone buzzed one more time. Mason. Beer tonight? Yeah, I could use one. 7 at the bar. I'll be there. I set the phone down and stood at the window, watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Zoe was packing her life into boxes, starting over in a place where no one knew what she'd done. Tyler was probably looking for a new gym, a new set of clients who hadn't heard the stories, and I was here, standing in my own space, breathing my own air, free. For the first time in years, I felt like I could see clearly. The structures I'd built, the life I'd planned, they'd all been based on a foundation that was cracked from the start. But now, I had a chance to build something new, something honest, something that wouldn't collapse the first time the weight shifted. I was good at that, building things, understanding how pieces fit together, knowing where the stress points were and how to reinforce them. I finished my coffee and grabbed my keys. I had a meeting with a client about an old church conversion. The building had good bones, solid structure. It just needed someone who understood how to work with what was already there, how to respect the foundation while creating something new. As I walked to my car, I thought about Zoe one last time. Not with anger or sadness, just with a kind of distant recognition. She'd been part of my life, and now she wasn't. The structure had failed, but I hadn't fallen with it. I'd stepped back, assessed the damage, and walked away while I still could. That was the difference between us. She broke things and expected someone else to fix them. I understood when something couldn't be fixed, and I had the courage to let it fall.